Hi, everybody. Welcome to another, what do we call this, episode? I'm not sure. Another video about recruiter enablement. I'm here with Chris Mannion, who is going to talk to us about this subject. So, Chris, thanks very much for taking the time to join me. Give us a bit about, we're relatively recent into the recruiting world, but the experience you have is highly concentrated. So, give us a bit about your background, because it didn't start in recruitment, and it'd be quite interesting to know about that.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Really thrilled to be able to chat with you. Yeah, so I actually, as you said, I started in a very different area. I was in aerospace engineering in the Royal Navy. Actually, so my early career was actually finding pirates out in the Gulf of Aden and the Gulf of Oman and the Indian Ocean. Spent a little bit of time doing that on a helicopter squadron, moved into research and development with unmanned aircraft and weapon systems. Before I left the military, went to business school, moved into supply chain and analytics for a few years at Amazon and then at Wayfair. And then come 2018, I was really struggling to build my team. I had a team of about 3 people. We really needed to be 7 to achieve what we needed to, but we just weren't seeing candidates coming through. And I was like, oh, it's like I graduated into the Great Recession. And at the time, it was very easy to get a job. That all the candidates were easy to come across. And I was like, well, why can't we find the right person? And so I thought, I think rather arrogantly, that I could go into recruiting, spend 6 months there, fix the recruiting problem, go back to the business and continue on that path. But 2018 found that the problem was very deep and very interesting. And so I've been in the recruiting space over the last 5 years. Started off leading our university and campus recruiting team at Wayfair, team of about 25 to 30 recruiters. Then over the course of the year was promoted and then built out what would now be called a recruiter enablement team, where I pulled together recruiting analytics, process improvement, some FP&A work, managing all the tool spend, and then built out our programmatic team as well, so that we actually had a pretty broad cross-section of all the recruiting that wasn't full life cycle pretty much in that team. Then end of 2020, beginning of 2021, saw a gap in the market and decided to leave to found Sonar Talent, which is what I'm building out right now. We're a self-service recruiting platform that helps business leaders and small recruiting teams to essentially scale their recruiting without actually scaling their recruiting headcount to support that.
Okay, great introduction. You hadn't told me previously about, like, your job was talent sourcing pirates in the Gulf of Oman. That's a great introduction to talent sourcing. Okay, so let's talk about recruiter. Yeah, I'm sure they are. Let's talk about recruiter enablement first of all. So what to you is, I mean, you effectively built a team doing this in Wayfair. What was that team, and is there any difference between what you would now consider to be recruiter enablement? What is it?
Yeah, so I think it was both an advantage and a disadvantage that I hadn't come from recruiting when I was going in to build that team. And so I was kind of looking at it from a supply chain and an aerospace point of view. Actually, I really like the approach that you've taken with the MALT framework, the kind of marketing, operations, learning, tools. I actually think that really embodies everything that an enablement function needs to provide in order to build that recruiting process. But the way I looked at it initially was as a talent supply chain. And what I was trying to figure out is, what point along this talent supply chain are recruiters seeing bottlenecks that are actually preventing them from doing their job? And then how can we as an enablement function remove those bottlenecks and actually improve the flow of candidates going through the system? So it was kind of like, that was one concept I was thinking about. The second was, actually borrowing from aviation, there's this concept called the dark cockpit, which if you're designing a cockpit for a pilot, essentially what you want to do is only provide them the information they need at the time. You don't want to distract them with information they don't need, so that when there is something they need, it pops up and they can take action immediately. They can just focus on their job, which I thought translated really well to recruiters, because as a recruiter, you actually really want them to build connections and build relationships with candidates, with hiring managers. What you don't want them to do is spend hours and hours looking through data and trying to figure out different trends. And so we kind of took those 2 approaches. And one, we looked at the process of enablement as improving candidate flow, and then as actually empowering recruiters to be more effective by reducing the actual non-essential work that they were doing, so they can focus more on the essential stuff. So all the things like reducing the amount of tools, reducing the amount of training for those tools, automating all of the analytics that we were asking them to do, and really kind of taking all that additional workload off them so they could spend more time talking to candidates. So that became like a very rough definition of enablement as we were looking at the time. I think since then that's only become more and more important with more tools and the use of AI in a lot of recruitment processes now. It really is the case that a recruiter now has more tools than they know what to do with, and so figuring out the right tools and the minimum package that you can give them in order to be effective, so you spend more time with candidates, I think is the most effective way to build that enablement process.
I absolutely love that thinking. I think recruiters are drowning in tools, and accessing all those different tools in so many different locations is a real cause of stress. I mean, I can't begin to think of the amount of stress there must be for a helicopter pilot who's got things flashing at them and stuff coming up. And how could you do your job under that type of duress? So the concept of the dark cockpit is one which is wonderful. And I hats off to you for bringing that into a completely different environment, because I think it really works well there also. Tell us about Sonar Talent. What have you been building?
Yeah, so I've essentially been taking a lot of the stuff that we were doing with that recruitment enablement team, learning from a lot of the lessons of actually having this big team of, we had about 450 recruiters at the peak,
Yeah.
a really strong recruitment analytics team, a ton of data to mine, and the talent to do it effectively. But really trying to take some of the principles and best practices that we learn and actually make them available to smaller teams that don't have access to that. And so
Yeah.
a few of the examples of that is actually looking at what does the good quality of hire metric look like, and how can you actually define what that is. And so in a big company, what you might do is look at historic hiring for a certain type of role, then try and figure out what are the traits that that person has that's going to drive strong post-hire performance, and then try and find more people like that. We actually ran a number of these short-term analyses at Wayfair and actually really improved quality in a lot of the different functions. But if you've got a team of 10 people and maybe no recruiter, then you can't do that. So one of the features that we've added is actually an ability to look at competitors in the market space who have already grown past the stage at which you're aiming at, to look at who they hired and who was successful, and actually
Yeah.
try and understand from that what are the traits that lead to success, not in a Fortune 250 company that is at $20 billion in revenue and has 20,000 employees, but at a 30-person company that is really growing and really trying to tackle a problem in the space. And so we've been taking features like that. The big feature that we're actually launching with this summer is a kind of referrals tool. One of the best ways of hiring early in a company's growth path is to actually look at their own referral network. We know referrals generally are stronger hires, convert faster, tend to stay longer. And so to give founders and start leaders an opportunity to really focus on building the company and not focusing on the recruitment process, but to create a way for you to upload your LinkedIn connection database to our platform. We then run it against our kind of quality of hire algorithm and show you, based on the roles that you've got open, who are the strongest matches, so that you can start doing targeted outreach based on the kind of most likely post-hire performance of someone, as opposed to just relying, did you work for, where did you go to school, what was your GPA, which we know are actually not good indicators of success. So there's a bit of a deep dive into some of the features, but really we're just trying to make recruiting easier and more accessible to more people, so that we can improve the ability for people to get hired, actually improve opportunity access for those that maybe don't have big brand names on their resume, or big kind of Ivy League or Oxford or Cambridge kind of schools in their background.
Well done. Sounds great. Every time, like, there are many people who are outside of recruiting, and they think recruitment is basic and it's broken, and I'm going to come in and spend 6 months fixing it and then go back to the real job. And they always find it's not as simple as they thought. And most of the time, they end up going back to what they were doing, because actually that was probably easier. And so bravo to you for finding such a stimulating challenge that it's not only kept you in it, but it's kept you focused on, I'm going to actually build something in this as well. So it's been really great to talk to you, Chris. Thank you very much for your time today. Where can people find your company?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we're at sonartalent.com. I try and stay active on LinkedIn as well, so would appreciate any follows and love to engage and chat more. This is a topic that's very close to my heart.
Yeah, lovely. Okay. Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.